Okay, so yeah, the Zoom only gave us 45 minutes, so we're back with part two. I'm going to let Malcolm start first. He wanted to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we were talking a bit about some of the political divisions earlier, and when I was saying about Brexit, I wasn't intending to suggest that everybody who voted for Brexit had a racist agenda, but I do feel that race has been used by people to divide our society, and that the extent of the prejudice that is experienced by some in our society is underappreciated by some of us, including, I think, myself, when we perhaps thought that more people shared our perspective than was perhaps the case.
Yeah, yeah, it's very difficult out there. Now, everyone, and that since time began, looks for a scapegoat, and it's wrong. It's be responsible for what you do, and no one else can. You can't push that off on anyone else. Really, be responsible.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy for people in power to say, look at them, they're the people you need to blame, rather than actually making sometimes, I mean, politics is full of difficult decisions, but sometimes those are avoided by instead just scapegoating others and avoiding actual real leadership.
All right, go back to the books that you were talking about.
Yeah. So I was saying Adrian Tchaikovsky's Walking to Aldebaran tells the story of a British astronaut who, as part of a multinational team, ends up in an asteroid-like, almost a maze. It's a misfunctioning ancient alien artifact. And through probably a misunderstanding between the machine and the human, he ends up being transformed into essentially a monster. And I really love the way in the novel the narrator character speaks. The way he structures his phrasing. It was so interesting that it felt musical, but musical in a kind of off-kilter way, if you see what I mean. I mean, it's I used the rhythms in the writing as an inspiration for the rhythms in the music, even when that didn't fit traditional, bar lengths. Now, obviously, in prog, funny time signatures are a common feature, but for me, this was a new thing to be using the rhythm of the words from the book to decide the rhythm in the lyric. And it deliberately is quite disjointed. It jumps from style to style because his mind is being turned into pieces and refashioned in a dodgy way by this miscommunication, and he's being turned into this basically cannibalistic monster. Although in the song we kind of leave him before he does anything very awful, so that you don't lose too much empathy.
You don't want
to. So yeah, that and one of the inspirations on the musical side, Peter Maxwell Davis's 8 Songs from Mad King, which also has that leaping between styles, the theatricality, and then the intimacy and the aggression, and then the inside he's still just this scared little boy lost in the middle of nowhere.
When did and that's the hug part, I think. What was the name of that?
The 16 Hugless Years. Well, that one relates.
16 Hugless.
16 Hugless Years. The author John le Carré.
Yeah.
So he's really, I mean, his real name was David Cornwall, and I listened to a biography of him, and it pointed out how many of the scenes in his books are scarcely disguised autobiographical vignettes, and his childhood was quite well, quite unpleasant, really. He seems to have been quite emotionally neglected, at least according to what he wrote in his biographer wrote. And his dad was, in and out of prison. Basically, was essentially a con man, according to his biography, and he was, sent away to schools, and his mum left the family when he was very young, and said not to have said goodbye, just to have left, and no contact with her basically for 16 years. And that was again a phrase from a book that really stood out to me, that sense of 16 hugless years. And then eventually she made some contact, but he felt that he'd been really affected throughout his life by that damaging period. So although with the Light of Ancient Mistakes and some of the other songs, it's in a different context, this idea of earlier damage causing cycles of harm. So he thought it carried on affecting how he treated other people because of how he'd been treated in his past. He never seems to really have been able to escape that shadow.
Yeah. The Glamour Boys brings back the situation with politics, and
yes,
we've had similar situations over here. But do you want to talk about that a little bit?
The Glamour Boys was named after a book by Chris Bryant, who's an MP in Britain. He he's been a long-standing campaigner for sort of standards in public life. He tells the true story of a group of predominantly gay or bisexual Tory MPs who fought against appeasement. So they previously used to go to Germany because before the rise of the Nazis, it was quite tolerant place for gay men. But then they started to find the people they were going to visit having disappeared into concentration camps, and the whole atmosphere changing. And this didn't fit the appeasement agenda of Chamberlain. So the party machine was threatening them with exposure of their sexuality, but very bravely, considering it was a criminal offence in those days, they didn't back down and did continue to argue against appeasement. And then many of them went on to fight, and some of them die in the Second World War. So in terms of as a song inspiration, that idea of them actually standing up for what was
fighting
right, and also maybe that moving from starting off with this kind of, that most of them were quite well off. They were they certainly could have afforded to just look away and not really be involved, but they're starting off being these rich playboys, and then seeing something awful and it really changing them and their sense of moral duty. And also I quite like having my own prejudices and assumptions challenged. Conservative MPs aren't necessarily the group that I would imagine myself being most drawn to.
Yeah.
But here was a story of a group of people who, in terms of general politics, I wouldn't have agreed with them on many things, I'm sure, but clearly took a very principled moral stand. which I found very, very moving in the book. So.
All right. And you confront the syndrome that you battle daily.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I can never.
I'm tired and everything hurts.
Wait, I'm tired of I'm tired and everything hurts. And
Yeah.
great way to pull that title together. And you've talked a little bit about that in past interviews, but
Yeah.
this really is a perfect song for it. I mean, the way the music fit perfectly. But go ahead.
So it's about my experiences with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which they say causes me chronic pain and other problems. Like many people with invisible disabilities, the question, how are you, can be difficult to know how to manage. I mean, it's pretty much always said with very good intentions. But it's almost like punctuation, or like if it's computers connecting on the internet, it's like a ping and a ping back. It's not usually said to mean, could you actually describe to me how you are currently feeling? Sometimes it will be, but usually it's just a conversational, I'm not trying to think of the right word. It's just part of the structure of a conversation without necessarily having content. And it's always a bit of a dilemma, when is it, I don't want to be dishonest with people. But also I don't want people to feel that every time they say hello to me, they have to get sucked into a conversation about my back or my vomiting or whatever it might be, when, perfectly understandably, they might not be in the mood for that. So yeah, the song there, how are you? Well, I'm meant to answer. It's not like I'm trying to drag you down, but I don't like dishonesty, and I can feel that I'm veering off the script. Now there's the opening lyric. So yeah, that's what it's basically about, my experiences of some of those conversations. And yeah, the chorus basically is, so if this time you're really asking, I'm tired and everything hurts.
Yeah. Well, you'd never tell. You're very strong, because every time I've talked with you, I don't sense it. But obviously, you are going through those situations. That I'm going to ask you right now: are you feeling those situations at this moment?
So, for example, knowing that I was going to be sitting up for this period now today, I'd make sure I'd scheduled lying down, and earlier in the day I didn't do too much at the computer today, for example. And you balance up. I'm having a pretty good day for me today. But on the other hand, when I say I was having a good day, I did have to spend about 3 hours lying on my side because I couldn't do anything else earlier today.
Wow.
And I would have much rather been able to be lying on my back when I could then be composing or doing something on the computer. But, some of the time I just have to be just on my side because the back. So I just lie there with an audiobook on.
Well, I'm very sorry to hear it. And there is no cure, or
No.
Yeah.
I mean, there are things that help. So keeping active as much as possible is helpful. But also balancing that against overdoing it. I have painkillers and things, but they just reduce rather than getting rid of pain. And the fatigue side and the brain fog feeling, that's a side of quite a lot of diseases that is really not obvious from the outside, but can be just as disabling as pain.
And reading must help immensely.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, it does affect my eyes to some extent. My eyes get tired and I see double if I try and do a lot of reading. But so now, I mean, I used to love reading books. Now I mostly listen to audiobooks because it doesn't strain my eyes too much, and I can do it at certain angles and things when I'm needing to. But yeah, I churn through vast hours of audiobooks, and I do that a lot also in relation to the album. So I mean, at the moment, I'm listening to a load of stuff about history of physics and what the you were saying about Oppenheimer earlier. Some of this the relationship between uncertainty, quantum physics, and then the nuclear weapons game theory, and going into the Cold War, which is a theme that interests me and might well be. I'm pretty sure as long as I manage to keep going, that I will do an album on that topic. It might be the next one, or it might not be the next one, but it's certainly something that I'm doing a lot of listening and think in terms of about the history of that time, to then pull out characters that work for songs for a concept album in that era.
No, I think that would be excellent for you. Have you seen the movie yet?
Not yet.
Can you go to movies? Is that, go ahead.
So, sitting for that long, unless it's a chair that really suits me, is hard for me. I will sometimes go if it's something that I really want to see enough, but it does take quite a toll on me. That
and that's a 3-hour movie. Yeah.
So generally, I find it easier to watch at home, lying down.
Yeah. Are you interested in seeing it?
Oh, very much so. Yeah, very much want to see it.
It's a good one. It's I think people are building up the movie a little bit more than. I mean, it's fantastic in terms of what he did with it, but I still wanted more of the challenge, more of the debate. And
yeah,
I know that's not what this was about. It was about documenting his life, but there's been a lot of documentaries on him, and I was really hoping there'd be more of that. But no, I'm not saying it's a bad movie at all.
And it's certainly one that I feel the cinematic aspect. I'm sure that if I waited to watch it at home, I would be losing quite a lot of the scale of the experience. It's if I have a particularly good day, I would be quite tempted to go and watch it, but it would be, physically a struggle.
All right, the last song is "Burn the World," and it's doing very well as far as distribution. And have you played that live? And how do people?
Yeah, we first played that live, I think, at last year's Prog the Forest, and we've done it several times since. So that's a song about climate change. It's sung from the perspective of somebody in the future looking back from a position in which we'd left it too late to try and make much of a difference. I'm not saying that I think we're in that position now. I think in the current situation, there are many millions of people who will be very negatively affected by what we've done to the environment. But realistically, the most privileged will be the least affected at the moment. Leave it too late to make changes, and then it's going to affect everyone, really. But the song is from the perspective of it being left too late, and somebody saying, of all the things we could have done, thinking of we're such a capable species in so many ways, and then the one thing we choose to do is to burn the world
and not take care of ourselves. Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know if you heard about the situation in Hawaii. Things, and that's just one of the many crazy things that are happening because of climate change. But again, more and more warnings. The Earth is warning us, and God help us if we don't wake up and say, "Let's stop." I mean, a whole city just devastated, and no warning, no, it's your song coming to life.
Unfortunately, I mean, I would hope there are other planets with life somewhere out there. But as far as we've found so far, of all the, rocks and icy balls and things out there, ours is the only one that we know to have life, and we don't have a spare one. We don't have a backup to, and the way that we treat it with contempt, I think it's tragic.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the economy is a subsection of the environment, not the other way around.
Yes.
The economy only works if you've got a sustainable environment, and without that, there is no economy.
Yeah.
And so the idea that we can only afford not to wreck a planet if economic conditions allow seems to me the wrong way around.
Yeah, I'll just say it, insane. Yeah, you're putting the wrong thing forward. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've discussed a lot, probably more than you wanted to get into, but do you have anything else you want to add or talk about that we haven't, or any other shows? I only mentioned the three, but I know you guys have more going.
Well, the big one big in terms of for us, it is at the Camden Club in September, where we're joined by the Wood Demons, and then we'll be doing a question and answer session about the new album, and then playing two sets, which is unusual for us. So we'll be playing a lot of songs from the new album, but we'll also be playing some more obscure things from we'll be playing at least one thing from each of our previous
good.
albums, and various supporters.
People like deep cuts. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. And so we've had some requests for some things that we've never played before, which we're intending to do our best to meet. Yeah. So that's something, that's what we're currently working on, as well as the CDs currently being pressed. So in the not too distant future, boxes of that will arrive, and then we'll be doing lots of signing and envelope stuffing.
Excellent. Yeah, and I'll be buying it when it comes when it's available over here. Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you again for everything, for your time. And know it's difficult for you, and I appreciate you doing it.
No problem. My pleasure.
Every single time you do it, and we have these, I think, very interesting conversations.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure, and I really appreciate all your support and encouragement. It does really help. It does encourage us.
Well, keep up the good work, and keep building these relationships with these bands. That's wonderful. We want to keep progressive rock alive.
Yeah.
And it's difficult with everything that's out there, and you see the headlines with Taylor Swift and Beyonce taking billions of dollars, and what about all these other fantastic artists that are actually making good music? So yeah, no, I'm more than willing to do everything I can to help you guys. I know it's a very
I really appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, yeah. Well, you take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Yeah. All right. Have a good afternoon, and thanks again.
And you. Thanks a lot.